Dan Roberts, welcome on to Searching for Mana.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for having me. So,
Yep.
Been invited over to Vegas. Anybody who's not watching the video, we're sat in a very luxurious suite in the Mandalay Bay at the ITC conference, where Dan and Nayms have a presence this week. So thanks so much for allowing us to film the Searching for Mana podcast.
You're welcome. Welcome to my abode.
It's a very nice abode. Not so great coffee, but I'll take what I'm given this morning. Dan, if you could introduce to the audience, really in some type of elevator, what Nayms are, what they do.
Sure. So Nayms is building a digital insurance marketplace. We use Web3 technology to bring the transfer of value and information into one environment. So we're aiming to provide flexible digital infrastructure for insurance players to build digital carriers. And what that means is using smart contracts to act as an on-chain balance sheet where an insurance manager can raise funds, can track ownership over individual investor investments, and can work with a network of participants to write risk against that balance sheet all on chain within a legal framework and a regulatory framework that is suitable for this new technology. It started from some research that I was doing with a fund called InsurTech Gateway, that's one of our lead investors. And the research was very much on two things. One, how could we scale insurance capacity for digital asset risk as a new risk category? The space was $150 billion at the time, largely uninsured, is still largely uninsured today. And the hypothesis was if the space continued to grow, then traditional insurance capacity wouldn't be able to scale to provide the volumes required in covering these all sorts of different types of risks that were coming from this new space of digital assets.
On that point, why would that be the case? Why would you assume that they wouldn't be able to cover it?
Few reasons. The main one being that if you're using a dollar-denominated balance sheet to cover crypto risk that's denominated in Bitcoin or Ether and a plethora of other assets, then that mismatch between assets and liabilities would force you to factor FX into your pricing when pricing the risk, making it very expensive. And your cover wouldn't be able to expand and contract along with your liability. So not only would that make products very expensive for insurance, but your capital would be inefficiently allocated, either over or underexposed at any given time. Inefficiently priced at the beginning, because you have the FX risk to price in, but then instantly could go either way based on what your liability was doing against the dollar. So we wanted to create a native environment to the crypto space that allowed very much the same value chain in insurance to conduct its business, but in a crypto native way. And that leads into the second piece was, if we could create something that was efficient for digital assets, then could that be a step change in efficiency for the wider insurance space as well? As many people know, crypto assets also have this concept of stable coins that are pegged to a fiat currency, usually US dollar. And so you could build these insurance programs in a stable coin to cover dollar-denominated risk, and that could go beyond digital assets into catastrophe, travel, health, parametric insurance, a whole world of insurtech perils.
Amazing. So if we just come up to date now, if you just talk us through, I know a number of people are geographically distributed.
Right.
At Nayms, you have a base in Bermuda due to some reinsurance regulation, or that's how I understand it. How has it been managing that through, not only are the team distributed, there's been COVID in this founding innings of yours as well. I know that you do a lot of stuff through like virtual meetings,
right,
and like even play online games with each other. So talk us through some of that, team bonding and how you've managed to do that through this period of time.
Yeah, so we were fully remote from the beginning, so pre-COVID days. And I guess the it comes with a great challenge as well as being the best part of my job and the culture within Nayms. So, on the challenge side, there are logistical issues and barriers in hiring people from all over the world, but less so time zone wise, which is the piece that people seem to get hung up on. The company, we try and keep a 4-hour window in the middle of the day where everyone is really overlapping, everyone across the whole business. And there are some adjustments to people's daily schedules to make that happen.
That's a really useful tip for anybody considering this or who hasn't done that yet. And we in Mana Lab did a study on distributed teams, and we set up a tool in Slack, which is called Moody Man.
Yep.
Where it was running sentiment analysis through teams when they've got different skill sets, and sometimes how the jargon can be confusing and can stress people when they're working remotely. We feel like it's an area to try and support teams who are distributed, because that clearly looks like it's one choice that certain organizations will take.
Right.
So specifically so you've got the time zones, which has been worked out well. Specifically, what are you doing other than when you come to Vegas and you're doing team bonding? Like throughout a week, how are you managing that?
Well, I act like a goofball for the first 10 minutes of every call, so that just gets some fun into the room. We all have VR headsets, very very modern and millennial, and we use them for different reasons. We use them every week for work. It's funny you mentioned eye contact. I do talk about it as being actually a part of VR. Is quite interesting. There's two things that are different between a Zoom and an online sort of metaverse meeting. One is you can look at people in the eye. I know it sounds dumb. It's like an avatar eye, but you end up, you're moving your head, you're looking around to different people. And the second thing, which doesn't happen too often, but you can have multiple conversations within a single group. And so you can have a small conversation over there, and that's quieter for you because they're further away. And then you can, quickly ask someone next to you a question, and that is a different dynamic as well. On Zoom, it's always one person talking or presenting. So yeah, we do try and use that, and then in a fun way, we have these games that we can play online every month or so that people can opt into.
Yeah, I find if you go onto Zoom with more than say 3 or 4 people, I mean, it's annoying, isn't it? Because either you feel like you might be lecturing people, or someone else is doing it, and if you try and interject with a comment, it's really tricky. But I remember having a conversation with you through it, and what really struck me, for quite a young founder, was how you were thinking of growing the team, like really from a value perspective, making sure that each hire was right, making sure you weren't over hiring, and that the team was, all productive and, caliber A in preference to let's just go big, let's go raise more money. I'd love you to talk to that a little bit, what the thinking there was, and given what's happening in the market condition, has that panned out to be the right move?
Yeah, the main piece is it's very difficult to be focused on fundamental analysis in a startup, because it's a startup. You could be anything. It could end up being Google. It could crash and burn within 10 weeks. And when it comes to valuations, there's 1,000,001 examples of the crazy stories that go on. And if they go badly, then the founders are vilified. And if it goes well, then they become these big heroes of our generation. And it can be reasonably easy when you get the right story and you sort of hook the venture market into this being the next big thing, to raise large amounts of capital, particularly if capital is free-flowing, which it certainly was last year. Yeah, I think in general, it was always, I was chatting about this with a friend yesterday, it's very difficult for me anyway, because of my character perhaps, to go out for a fundraise with a story that I don't believe in. And it's your storytelling, it's this is the team, this is our business, this is our future. And if I don't believe that we're worth $1 billion, which right now is the case, then that's going to be difficult for me to go out and pretend. And you get 1,000,001 questions a day when you're fundraising. I don't want to be playing some character that believes in something that isn't true. And so it's always just about the story. If you can stay as close as you can to what you think is fundamentally the case, then you'll always be able to grow that over time. So, I won't claim to have had this, magical ball that said, well, the market's going to crash and we're going to want to have raised a small amount and then continue to grow as our actual value grows. But right now, that's kind of what it looks like, and all for taking the credit for that.
Yeah, amazing. We'll cut back into some of that in the final part. Now let's go as far back as possible and really try and help us, if you could be so kind, to visualize, what growing up as Dan was as early back as possible, thinking from a lens of what potential influences you had early on were.
We really just spent a lot of time in the natural environment. I'm a guy of the mountains. We camped a lot. My dad sailed. That's a lot of where we spent our time. Close family, not city folks or anything like that. So, I know there's a need for this sort of entrepreneurial, story, but it really was just a, connected, peaceful.
Well, there's a few trends that I pick up on when trying to find. I know I have to keep pushing at this point.
Yeah.
But it's interesting if we find something, which that might be. Like the founder of Rocket Internet believes that most of the greatest entrepreneurs were born on farms. He literally looks for this because he thinks that you get to this position of being able to dream so big that when you then get to the city or you start your venture, you won't let go of that huge dream. The conditioning isn't there.
Right.
And so actually, there's many different models that could make you an outlier. I think there's a quote from Benjamin Franklin saying that, and obviously this is a quote from a long time ago, most men basically die at 25 because at that point, any clear ambition has basically gone. They're on the corporate, kind of treadmill. But should everybody go and start something? I mean,
yes.
No, for sure not, right?
Why not?
Well, I think it depends, at what scale somebody's going to go and try and do something. So you've set up a bunch of ventures, I've set up a bunch of ventures, and I don't think everybody's going to want to do some of the elements that make you focus on finance, running a business, payroll, regulation, the grind of setting up a self-sufficient, proper business. Certainly from my perspective, and talking to friends, looking at other people's experience, is monumentally tricky, unless you, like you say, align it with exactly where your sweet spot is. And I don't think a lot of people find that straight away. So I think if you have, if you know where, you kind of get energy instead of losing it, and for you that comes from social enterprises.
Yeah, I think
I would say.
So. Setting something up is too prescriptive, as broad as that is. It's just about, there's a fear barrier, I think, to lots of people in terms of what they can do with their time. And that's the piece that I would maybe just encourage doesn't exist. But, it's a difficult one to encourage because, people are leaving stable things and maybe part of them just kind of likes the conversation around would love to do this or that, and you talk about payroll and all these other bits. You don't want to spend, or I don't want to spend my whole day in some creative haze of entrepreneurship inspiration. Yeah, it's fun to have these things that tie us to getting things done and feeling productive. And
for you,
for me, right?
But
So
in the day job, having interviewed thousands and thousands of candidates over the years and going into their drivers, I don't think that there's a segment of people who would be motivated enough to properly set up their own business. And by that I talk about whatever it might be. It could be a cafe, it could be something online, it could be a big business.
Right.
And then I think that there's, you can kind of get in a bubble around where you are if you consider the people you work around previously or at Nayms. These are highly able, competent people who could all probably set their own business up, no doubt about it, if they wanted to do it. So I think the prescription, this happened in work recently as well a lot because of venture backing, where there's this frenzy about, I want to be in a venture-backed business and go be a founder. I don't think that's good advice. I'm not saying that's what you're saying at all. And I think that happened in venture as well. It's well, look, if you should get venture. Venture is fit for purpose if you want to be this outlier business that's going to be monumentally big, then that's why it's been geared, right? But there's a bunch of other financial asset classes you can go and raise from: private equity, high net worth individuals, or you can organically run a profitable business. And then that's a whole different model. And so I really, like, through the show, want to kind of interview enough different type of entrepreneurs so people can see that there's many different options if you're compelled to go do that.
That's right.
But there's another option, which is like, work can be brilliant where you're also not the person who set it up.
That's it. I'm sort of, joking, but with the sort of everyone should go and start something. It's not about starting something. It is just about, you have a thing that's in your mind that's, pulling you in a direction. And usually it's got nothing to do with a startup, company, any of that. It's about some flow state thing that is, I want to write more, I want to paint more, I want to ski more, I want to run, or whatever it is. And that can always be something that can become a larger part of your life.
Yes.
And that's the bit for me, is like, people say, or you think about how many hours people work, and let's just take the cliche, you're in the office, you're working 7 till midnight every day, and you're knackered. You're tired not because you're doing loads of hours, but all of those hours are like effort. But if you can find something that there's a naivety to it as well, which I think has always been a good part of my character. Is just there should be a little healthy dose of naivety with these things. Is if you can try to dissolve this delusion that you can't spend more of your time doing the thing that you enjoy doing, that thing that's triggering in your mind on a regular basis. If you're out of alignment, there are all sorts of jobs that can support you financially to go and do that, and that can sometimes be as the founder of something.
I love it. And sorry, I'm just being like contrarian on that point. Mana is set up, it's what is people's magic, what is their connection to the purpose of the companies we try and align them with. And a lot of the drive for me or anybody who's working on Mana is so many people are just not happy with the role that they have. And it's just wonderful when you do manage to get them into a position where they're really energized by the work they're doing. Right, so quick fire Mana round. We're going to find Dan Roberts' Mana and Superpower.
Ready for it.
Dan, what would you put onto the front cover of your favorite publication? So think of whether I don't know what the insurtech for Forbes is, but you've got the front cover. What would you put on it?
I'm not sure an insurtech publication is my favorite publication.
What's your favorite publication?
I respect The Economist a lot. I think it's a good one.
Let's go with that. Me too.
Yeah. What would I put on the front? Just a photo of my face looking super wise. No. What would I put? I'm interested in this this kind of old insurance story of a bunch of industrial folks getting together in a room, in a cafe, and kind of figuring out what's become insurance today. Almost like an image of an old coffee house and half of it sort of being wiped out, and you're just left with, a smart contract line of code or something like that.
Ooh, I like it.
And it's, there's a fresh new metaphorical coffee house that's being put together by a random group of people all over the world. And it's the beginning of the next 350 years.
Love it. Amazing. What keeps you up at night?
Generally sleep pretty well, but I think a piece for me is that when you talk about this 0 to 1 thing, it's like not getting to 1 is more sort of weighing on my mind than not going from 1 to a gazillion. And so, there are so many people putting in a lot of work into what we're doing, and not having those people find some success in their innovation getting out into the world is kind of that weighs on your mind. You want that to...
Yep, thank you. Really interesting your take on this, because actually you've given quite a contrarian view to social media, which I agree with, which is there is for sure downside, but there's also benefit, and I think it gets too strongly put into the it's all bad category. The massive topic, I think, moving forward is artificial intelligence. Would you consider artificial intelligence friend or foe?
Oh, because we don't understand it. You know, it's like it is. So I had I was listening to a Diogo podcast, and he mentioned the book Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch, which is, probably the one I bring up most in conversations. It's an incredibly...
You just killed my next question.
aligning. But AI seems to be the beginning of this sporadical infinity. So he has a very optimistic view of the beginning of infinity, this idea of the limitless, almost universality of knowledge, and knowledge being defined as good explanations, or explanations that can hold up to increasing culture of criticism, self-criticism. And AI seems to come under the same bracket of the beginning of infinity as that definition, but with a totally and utterly unknown for us. And I would imagine that David Deutsch's view, not to put words in his mouth, is that he's optimistic because you never know what you can achieve, through human knowledge, that can lead to all sorts of incredible inventions for the survival of our civilization and finding new places to live and so forth. Whereas AI feels like it's in another category of just total unknown.
Thank you. Do you have a particular mantra that you love, like to tell the audience about or live by?
Do I have a mantra? Along the lines of no fear, I think. And fear is way more subtle than we think. So yeah, try to figure out ways to understand the various elements of fear in your life that are dictating the way that you are behaving towards other people, towards what you want to do with your time, towards that climb or hike or whatever it is or startup or musical instrument you wanted to start or whatever it is.
I love it. If you could be so kind to kind of recommend who you think a dream guest to come on to Searching for Mana would be for you?
Yvonne Chouinard. I don't know if I've said that right, but he's the founder of Patagonia. And he wrote a book that I've almost finished called Let My People Go Surfing. Total veteran, been in it for a long time. I have Patagonia gear. He has a life that I really relate to and love, and he just loved being outdoors and skiing and hiking and ice climbing and all these things. And he managed to build a business that is totally aligned with the way that he thinks and what he wants to see in the world. I didn't grow up being like, I just want digital insurance marketplaces to, but there are elements that you pull from these things. So, he would be, and there's some recent news which I think has gone pretty viral of him transferring the whole company into these foundations and, giving up his billionaire status and things. And you might see that as a PR headline, and you read his book and it is totally, he's seen this, for his whole life. He's seen how this has gone. And, the traditional business consulting wisdom was kind of always trying to push him off track, and he had a real direction that he just very cleanly saw. And he talks a lot about the environment and Patagonia's impact on that.
Amazing. I mean, I just love biographies, typically always trying to find the next one. So you've kind of covered what book I'm going to go get as well. So, Dan, what would you say your mana is?
Yeah.
And I know you'll have many, but if you were to say what the main one is, what's your mana?
What's my mana?
Lloyd.
I'm a bit of a joker. I was a joker at school. I'm a bit of a goof. I have this. I have a job to do, and I love all of that work. But it's back to that point of those little pieces throughout the day that make life fun. I'm sort of pretty much an idiot most of the time, and that seems to be going all right for me. So, joking around, it makes it more fun to meet new people, and that always just comes back to you. So I'll take that.
He's gone for joking about. So we're going to make mana cards for all of
Joking about, I'm happy with it.
all of our guests. And
Ask you know, I'm happy with it.
all of our guests. And
Ask Danielle and David and my colleagues. Maybe they
that's
have a
what they'll
different
say. They'll be like,
Yeah.
this guy's bringing nothing.
He's a
apart from-"
genius, you know. He's like, you know, intellectually superior. No, it'll be.
Being a goof. Okay, love it. Amazing. So, covered like the here and now, gone into your bio. I think that like what's running through it for me, like said is, I mean, if I was going to say what your mana is apart from goofing around, it seems like this amazing openness. So I might put that on there as well.
Nice.
Want your
I
cards-
disagree
want
with your
cards to be
mana.
as strong.
I'm going to do
This is a centralized mana card.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
through some way of whatever, you know, has happened throughout the past, I've ended up in this moment of feeling very present. You know, that can be in my manner if you like. You know, I don't know how it's happened, but I feel right here all the time, every day, and that allows me to be a goof. So maybe that's a better.
Just like Michael
way.
Jordan. That was
Just like Michael Jordan.
Just like
People
Michael Jordan.
often compare us. Yeah.
So we don't have much longer. So just to wrap up, really, wherever you want to take it. I mean, I'd like to just over the next 5 minutes let you talk to the future of Nayms and what you would hope to achieve. You know, if we went really Hollywood,
Yeah.
what's the outcome here? You can go as far into the future as you'd prefer.
Yeah, I mean, sort of I've alluded to it a few times, but the big one for me is I would love for so we can talk about what the future of Nayms, the proposition looks like, but I would love for Nayms, the company, by being defined as a group of people, being a example of a good collaboration of people. On the company side, we have two halves. On one side, we have the Nayms marketplace, you know, placement of insurance programs, raising of capital, trading, etc. And then on the other side, we have this catalyzing token. And so the name token allows users of the marketplace side to buy into its success and to buy into decision making. So they, for example, through being a token holder, have governance over our discretionary fund, the Nayms discretionary fund, NDF we call it. And there's a lot of influence that discretionary fund can have, and we like the idea of there being this collaboration on an industry level, even between competitors. Like some collaborative attempts have happened in blockchain, we think this is a really neat one, because we're not starting on the collaboration piece, we're starting on the utility of a marketplace, and then allowing those in the marketplace to buy into various different types of activities. So yeah, that Hollywood piece long term is really seeing the opening up of an insurance market and how do they work together as well as compete in a competitive environment, but collaboration is always part of that competition. So yeah, who knows? Sky's the limit, and we're about to launch and put it to test.